Hey, everybody. Welcome to the River Bassin Rivals. So, this is a new podcast segment that I'm starting. Uh, I'm your host, Ken Morris, and this is just a kind of a River Bassin, in essence, themed podcast. So, all this is going to be talking to people who have been, are, and have become my rivals in any sort of river bassin, whether it was the River Bassin Trail or if it was in KBF or a local event or just fun fishing in general. There's always competition involved in fishing, whether it's just fishing with your buddy on the stream or if it's tournament involved as well, or like true competition. So this is just going to be some fun stories, get some techniques, just have a good conversation about river bassin and supporting that way of life and the adventures that we do on that moving water. And our first guest is a pretty fun one. He's a great guy. He's a great fisherman. He always has a lot to say, and he's been around for a very long time. Fishing against him for a very long time in that sense. Not calling him old. That came out a little bit wrong, but we'll see. All right, buddy, we're gonna bring you in. Tim Perkins is joining us today.
I appreciate that intro, brother. I have been around a long time. I was here before water.
That's what makes you so good. That's what makes you
there
so
you
good.
go. I know the contour.
Yeah, exactly. You formed it. You helped form it, right?
That's it, man. Me and the big guy, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, when did we first meet each other, Tim? Was it 2016 or 17? I can't remember.
That's a good question. It was somewhere in that neighborhood, 2016, 17.
Yeah,
it was after the rebirth, if I may use that term.
Yeah.
River Bassin actually kicked off in 2010, and I fished one tournament, I think, in 2010. In 2011, I did the whole thing, and then I think like 13, it went away, 12, 13, 14, somewhere for a couple of years, and it came back.
Yeah, because
it was so good. You were very, very beneficial in getting it back.
Yeah,
I appreciate that.
Oh yeah, I mean, I that's when I came onto the scene, man. I didn't start kayak fishing until 2016, I think. That was like my very first year, because that's when I graduated from my school and started working my job, and I got my first kayak as a graduation present. So.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I eventually got into the tournaments and ended up at a River Bassin tournament. And that's a different story for a different time, but I never looked back. So that first year that I started traveling with Clayton, that was
Clayton Haskell.
Yeah, exactly. Haskell. He, my partner, and maybe we'll get to him at some point. Maybe I can get him to get on here. I don't know. He's a little camera shy sometimes, but believe it or not. But, yeah, that's when I started. I was fresh. I wasn't nearly as deep into this stuff as that, but we were competitors at that point and quickly, became rivals per se. But it was a lot of fun, and that's what's so embellishing about the River Bassin community is just these are people that you're competing against or you're fishing against because you always want to catch the biggest fish, whether it's in competition for money or just bragging rights, but there's always secret information and stuff too, but you become friends and it's a support system because they're river fishing the river is just slightly different. It's harder to access. It's it's like a special community. What are your feelings on that, Tim?
I feel exactly the same way you do. I always looked at it down here in the South, if you had a problem with each other, you just had a good little fight and then you shook hands and you walked away, and that's what it was like, when we competed. Yeah. We throwed it on the line, buddy, and the next week we were best friends again. But I miss that part of it. In the big lake stuff, it's gotten really, really away from my roots, which is very simple and basic. And I think we've had that conversation, you and Drew and I, about getting away from our roots. Sometimes I just have to have that where you just got your kayak and a couple of rods and a paddle and just go fishing. That's what River Bassin was all about, dude.
Absolutely.
And, I enjoyed that community, met so many cool folks, man. And most of them are lifelong friends, just like yourself,
Yeah.
In any other realm, we probably would have never met.
No,
And
no,
that's what's so cool about it. But we connect with what our passion is. And, that's for me is river fishing, is passion to me. That's what drives me. What's around the next bend? I share that a lot. I get to speak at several little venues, and not that I'm somebody, but
hey,
I share that. That's what keeps me young. I mean, I hope I'm doing this at 85.
you're not
What
the
is
outdoor
running?
coach for nothing, Tim. Get to that later.
There you go, man. The outdoor coach. Well, I'm trying to bring my kids up. I mean, Ken, I've got kids nearly your age, but I've got 15-year-old twins now. So it's been a second view at life, and we take things easy, man. And look, they love being on the creek bank just like I do. And I love that.
That's awesome,
And,
man.
we share with everybody. So it's a good thing, good feeling. I hope one day River Bassin actually does come back. I do.
Yeah, that would be awesome if the tournament trail could come back, but that River Bassin community never went away. And I think, hopefully we can make a push to make that a thing and kind of incorporate that into the series that are going on. Like, we want more representation of the river systems. And not to say that they've done a bad job.
No.
Not at all. It is not a defamation of that at all. But, just make sure that we keep the river systems part of this, or even maybe get a little bit more into some individual river tournaments if we can. I know that, we've gone to the Susquehanna, the Potomac has been in play, the Mississippi has been in play in some of them, and that is awesome. But there are so many more rivers out there. And,
Amen.
There's so many more rivers and streams with a little bit of tweaking to some eligibility and some rules and stuff like that, which are conversations that we've had with Drew, and he has a good direction to make those things viable. It's something that can happen. So,
well, I mean, we've gotten caught up sometimes with the bigger venues of trying to be a bass boat world. Dude, we got into kayak fishing to get in that little unaccessible stuff that bass boats can't get into.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we forget that from time to time. Even some of the bigger trails now are cutting off a lot more fishable water. For what reason? I mean, we're all in kayaks for a specific reason.
Yeah.
I've had this conversation before. I mean, like you said, I have been here for a while, but I love the River Bassin format. You came into a city. They always talk about money, but they came into a city, let's say Birmingham. And, he set up a radius. You could fish any public water within a 50-mile radius of there. So you got to have your wit. You get a chance to fish your strengths. You can stay away from crowds, or you can join the crowds. There's a lot of different things there, and you're not just all dumped into one place. And, that to me is what kayak fishing is all about. And the other thing too, a lot of times if I can find those little old bitty stretches that nobody else wants to fish, those are those dumb fish. I can catch those.
Yeah. Hey, those are some special stretches. And that's the thing too about these, the rivers and creeks and streams, is they're never the same. I fished the same creeks 2, 3, 10, 15 times, and they've never been exactly the same. The bite's been slightly different in a slightly different area. Yeah, there's some okay, this bend, there's going to be a fish, but they've never hit at the exact same spot every time. It's always a little bit different depending on what, how things are set up and how that water's flowing and what the weather was like. And,
there's a lot more uncontrollable variables.
Exactly.
I mean, you know what I'm saying? You don't know that those crawfish are hatching at that point in time, or you don't know if the sunfish are whatever.
Yep.
Those fish are so attuned to their environment. And that's what you have to do. And that to me is what River Bassin is all about. You always got to think like a fish. I mean, you know what I mean?
You got to adapt to your scene every time. It's not like, I found, not that it's this simple at all, because I don't understand electronics, and that's also another conversation. But it's not just popping a pin on something and then coming back the next day and dropping a drop shot on it, or doing something like that.
We have problems in that area on two different spectrums. I get it with you, but with me, I date myself. I go back to a flasher where it was just a little blip of light. I said, all this other stuff where you're seeing now has got me all confused.
Exactly. I mean, that stuff still gets me. I could even, if it was just a green light and a red light that said green, there's a fish right here, and a red light
Stop, go.
it's just like, don't fish here. I probably still wouldn't understand it. It would be like, what is this, Christmas?
That thing's lying, man.
Yeah.
I know it's lying.
And there's got to be a fish in there. I'm going to find it. Prove it wrong.
No, yeah.
So, yeah. So, like, since we're on the tournament trail specifically talk right now, the old River Bassin Tournament Trail, what would have been, let's say, what's your favorite memory or moment from that? Can you pull? You got a story?
Dude, I've got stories, and I shared this years ago.
Or at least one you want to share right now. Maybe not. It doesn't have to be your favorite. Or what's the most appropriate story or memory right now that you want to pull?
Well, I'm telling you, I have actually started writing a book on 2011. It was a magic time for me, and I would share that. But every stop, there was like 6 stops, and every stop there was a magical story there. And I thought, man, how cool will this be just to sit here and tell the story about all this? Because, there were some very valuable lessons there, but I will never forget 2011. I won the national championship in Virginia. Was not accustomed to smallmouth at all on the New River. And we got there, and it was like a 100-year high. I mean, it was flood stage. It was, oh, dude, it was very intimidating. I had never seen anything like this. It was 10 foot above flood stage. And Ken, for some reason, I run into a dude out on the creek. That's the thing on the river. You never meet bad river people. I haven't in 40 something years. And he's like, dude, I live for this time. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he said, dude, when it gets this high, it pushes those smallies up in those little eddy pools. And he said, dude, find the biggest spinnerbait you can find and put on you some braid. And you don't need but one rod and just go fishing. And dude, I'm going to tell you something, brother. The week leading into that, the first time I got on the river, I was scared to death.
Mm-hmm.
Got off the river that day. My wife's like, what was it like? Because I'd opened my truck door and you couldn't even hear yourself think, it was so loud. I mean, just rushing water.
Yep.
And I said, it was like riding a screen machine for 8 hours. You couldn't get off of it, man. I said, but I have caught smallmouth that you would never believe. Jeez. And I did. Oh my God. I caught so many big old smallmouth I've took that experience down here to the south catching spotted bass, and it works. I did a video a couple of years ago about storm chasing. In the summertime, you get these big flash showers that pop up, and it throws that muddy water in a lot of those inlets. Dude, that's some of the best time to catch the biggest spots of your life, just like those smallmouth.
Wow.
But I thought that was a cool story, man. And that's the first time I ever met Jeff Little, ever. Okay. And he was at that venue, and the rest of it's history.
That's awesome, man. I can't imagine coming to somewhere new like that, the New River, completely flood stages. I mean, you've had experience fishing a lot more than I have, but I still would be pretty apprehensive about flooded waters. You know what I mean? Like, I would be like, nah, I don't know.
Well, I'm going to tell you now, that New River it's about the size of the Susquehanna. You know how wide it is. Yeah. Can you imagine that with that kind of volume in it? Dude, it's intimidating. It really is, in a plastic boat.
Yeah, that's a nothing to mess around with for sure. No disrespecting that, or it's going to get you for sure.
Well, that's the thing too that I laugh about now. But I fished and won my first tournament on River Bassin Trail out of a borrowed kayak. I didn't even own a kayak. I had grown up on rivers and creeks in a flat bottom boat.
Okay.
And I borrowed a kayak. I was like, dude, I like this, man. So I went to Terrapin Creek over in Piedmont, and I got my first kayak, and, rest is history.
Hey.
And we kid about it too now.
Yeah, everyone has their origin story, and of like how they got into the kayak fishing and stuff like that. So that's interesting. Like I said, I got a sit-in as a graduation present from my wife, and I always joke it's like the worst thing she's ever done because it's
She's trying to get rid of you.
Yeah, because then not even a year, 9 months, I had to buy a better one. I had to buy a sit on top, and that was better for fishing, not just a recreational sit-in. You know what I mean? And then I was traveling every weekend, and then there were tournaments, and then it was so.
I actually, and this was a cool little tidbit. I saw the first Coosa on a piece of paper before it was ever even introduced. Drew comes up to, which Lance and Drew go back farther than we do.
Yeah.
But Lance and I were sitting at I think we were in Columbus, Georgia at a tournament. And Drew comes up and says, "Hey, man, what do you think about this?" And there was a Coosa. I mean, he had it all drawn out on a napkin. And then, the next thing you know,
that napkin, that's always the joke. The bar stool napkin.
There you go.
Invention for all your notes.
But dude, he did so much for the river community and didn't even know it. You know what I mean? And most people didn't know it.
It's still,
he turned the kayak community up on their head. He really did.
It's having a ripple effect, man. And I think I think he's super proud about that. And he actually just made a post about it today. About Jordan Marshall, and I think Jordan Marshall was referencing starting in the River Bassin Trail or something along the lines of what Drew has done and how it's affected this community, with their fishing and stuff in general. So, it's crazy how that simple little River Bassin Trail has affected us this many years later and influenced how people have really changed their lives. Not self-included.
Well, it actually started as a gathering. I mean, you know what I'm saying? There weren't even money involved. It was just bragging rights. They always had a little camp out, and you had a fire, and everybody cooked, and just a community type thing.
Didn't he start it with just like a forum? Wasn't Drew just on the forums, and then then there was hey, I think he calls them rodeos, doesn't he? Where he's like, rodeos where they just get together and fish and compare what we caught just for bragging rights and hang out and camp and cook and all that stuff. And then, the tournament trail took off from that. So it's pretty crazy how all that started for sure.
Well, it's pretty cool now that after the fact that we can sit down and I, if I'm experimenting with something, I can call Drew or, Drew's actually called me a couple of times, but I mean, you're looking at people that have been on 400 or 500 different rivers. I mean, you know what I'm saying? So y'all know a little bit about river fishing at that point in time.
Absolutely. And that's the thing is I'm just getting started too. And that's the wild thing to me is I'm so far behind because I just started, I grew up, I fished for catfish. I fished some. I wasn't I wouldn't call myself a fisherman. Like I said, I didn't start bass fishing until around 2016. So I'm way far behind. And I've never caught a shoal bash. You know what I mean? I've never.
No, you're not. I mean, that's the thing, man. A bass is a bass is a bass is a bass. And, a lot of people that have a lot more experience sometimes get caught up in getting away from the simple fact. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You've done really well if you're just starting at 216. I mean, 2016. So, and you hold your own. You do. You really do. And
try to.
It's been a great ride. So I just love river bassin. I really do. And when I get a chance to talk to kids, we're trying to start kayak fishing just like they did in Georgia. And we're right here on the border. And I've actually co-authored a textbook for fishing, kayak fishing specifically, for high school students. We're in the process. So me and Ed Mashburn's a freelance writer, writes for several magazines, and he's an ex-educator just like myself. But, I try to tell these young people, if you can creek and river fish, you can lake fish. Because what is a lake? A lake is just a creek and a river that's got a lot of water on top of it. But the fish still interact and travel just like they do on a creek.
That's true.
And the feeding patterns and their ambush points and they have the same basic needs, except for a blueback herring lake. And oh my God, I don't think anybody's figured that one out.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's actually a very good perspective, because if you think about it, just like you said, all lakes are just dammed up rivers and creeks, so that channel's still in there somewhere. And even if it's making new channels and cuts, they're all reacting to current, whether that current is created by flood, like recession, like, flood waters and then recession, or if they're opening the dams, the gates, and they're sucking water. That's all just creating current, whether it's natural or not. And the fish have to react to that. So if you are able to read that current like you have to do to river fish or creek fish, then you should be able to find something. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
In theory, I guess. Putting it in practice, I guess, is the hard part or the fun part.
You see how consistent Drew Gregory is?
You can't. How can't you?
I mean, seriously.
Yeah, like
and dude, he's a river dude, and he knows how fish set up. And, he just goes to those extremes. He thinks outside the box, and it's still a simple game.
Yeah.
And, but he's got that hyper energy going on for him, man. I mean,
yeah,
you know what I'm
saying? Endless energy.
He does.
Don't have that.
I told him, I said, dude, I'm intrigued by you. I said, because I said, you were me 20 years ago. I said, I was that same dude, man.
Yeah.
And you know what's funny about the whole thing? Our birthday's on the same day.
Oh, jeez. That's wild. That's some sort of energy in the universe there.
Look, I just and my wife, which this, kid. Drew's been over here several times at my house.
Mm-hmm.
My wife and I just kind of look at each other and smile sometimes. See, I told you, that's you. Tim, I'm so glad you grew up.
Do you used to be that scatterbrain too? Like, gotta go do
yes,
this
because I had
and
to
do
call
this.
her, speed dial. Honey, where are my hooks at? Where?
Can you ship these to the Airbnb? I've never seen anything so wild in my life. I'm afraid to have things shipped to my house, let alone an Airbnb where I'm going. But every time.
Dude, we stayed out in Texas. Now, this is stupid. I'm getting off the point, but dude, we stayed in a little old A-frame. It might have been 1,500 square feet, just a little old bitty thing. All right. The whole first floor was Drew. I mean, those totes, like he's got 40 totes. Hey, man.
Yeah, those Plano totes.
Lance and I were on bunk beds in the upper room. We kept our stuff outside.
Yeah. All my stuff sat outside underneath the stairs.
Oh, it's all good, man.
Oh, yeah,
it's all
sure.
good.
So
I wanted to congratulate him too about their new child. Beautiful family.
Absolutely. Sophia, I actually just got a video of Sophia the other day. I think he put it on his story. Just for everybody who's listening, I guess. Today's January 3rd, just started the new year. I'm not sure when this will post, but just so you have reference of when Tim and I are talking, since we've made references to posts that are happening today. So definitely, we pick on Drew a lot, but he's definitely done a lot for the River Bassin community and
in this sport.
In sport,
and my family and me as an
it's all in good fun, and he'd poke right back at us when he has the chance, and I'm sure that he will. So Tim, if you had to pick a technique in a creek, you said get back to the roots of it, where you take one rod or whatever. What's going to be tied onto that rod?
Spinnerbait.
100%
of the time.
Hey, that's a good answer. I'm not going to argue with you. That's at the top of my list somewhere too.
Well, I was burning that trail up with a spinnerbait for a good little run, and Lance and I both, and then all of a sudden the bladed jig come out, and that kind of throwed an equalizer in on us, and it did. Which you guys throw it a lot, I know that. And I know Drew does, but that was the thing with me. I threw a spinnerbait and it had a very specific blade pattern, and it had a lot of little specifics, but Ken, I caught fish on that one spinnerbait for like 10 or 15 different states. everywhere I went, I caught fish on that. I knew I could catch a fish on that.
They're
Well,
super
that company
consistent
went out of business.
Ooh.
Well, that company went out of business, the original one.
Mm-hmm.
So I sat down with one of my buddies that I knew through the BASS world, Dalton Bobo. And I said, where can I get my hands on these? He said, man, let me make that for you. And I was like, what are you talking about? Well, I did not know that he was part owners of a bait company. And that's how it all got started with Redline. I mean, it was Premier League, and then now it's Redline. Ricky brought everybody out. But I sat down and spec'd that whole system out. And that's what the River Series is actually a system. Has the same blades. And what I found out with a spinnerbait is I could catch fish on it, but there was an uncontrollable variable that I could not control, and that was the current rate.
Yep.
And, if you got real high current, you can't take a 3/8 spinnerbait because it's going to blow it up to the top. So I made heavier baits, but used the same profile and blade size. So that's the whole theory behind the series.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll carry a half, sometimes I'll carry a 3/4, sometimes I'll carry 3/8, sometimes I'll carry 1/8.
Yep.
But that particular profile on that bait, and it's got a hidden weight system in it, so it's not a lot of overkill.
Yeah.
Dude, I couldn't put in a tractor trailer how many fish I've caught on that stupid thing.
Yeah, dude. I'll just I think you remember, I'm pretty very scarce when it comes to how much stuff I take with me. If I lose a couple things, I'm pretty much out of lures because
done for the day.
And I carried out, so I've had comments I'm walking out to this creek or this river or whatever. I got a 3/4 spinnerbait tied onto one of them. He's like, "You're taking that out to that creek?" Yeah. They're like, "Okay, it looks a little big." I'm like, "Nah, okay, it'll be all right though." You know what I mean? This little creeks you can literally jump across in some areas.
Exactly.
It make that weight difference. That is a key thing that you mentioned. It's having the proper weight to perform in the current that's in the section that you want to fish is huge. It's really huge because sometimes if they're setting up underneath that waterfall or something like that, that those little skinny ones, the little creek spinnerbaits, they just don't perform because they get pushed around.
They're not in the water column that fish is actually set up in.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the thing that you had to do. But I've just come out with another one that's going to be a rival. The cat's out of the bag because I've done so many videos with me throwing a black spinnerbait. But if you actually think about nature's very simple, man. It's black, brown, or green. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I take that black spinnerbait, and I think seriously, I don't know how many 8-pound plus fish I've caught off that stupid thing, off a creek that you can jump across. Yeah. What we're talking about. Exactly. And people's like, there's no way you caught that fish out of there. Yes, you can, dude.
Yep, absolutely. And until they do it, they won't ever believe you.
And I'm not going to tell them.
Yeah, exactly. All right, cool. I'm just going to mess around, going to practice. That's all. Just practice my casting. That's all I'm doing.
Well, a lot of that's fresh on my mind because, like I said, I've started. I have a Tim Perkins Fishing Facebook page, and we're turning it to the Outdoor Coach. Now, it's not going to be all 100% fishing, but my family, we're an outdoor family. We do a ton of things outdoors, and dude, what better resource with young families or single parent families to have a resource that, hey man, you ain't got to have $1 million to go out and have fun with your family and make a memory. And but we do that quite often. We do a lot of overnight trips and but dude, we just enjoy each other's company out on the river.
That's awesome. So get into this a little bit more. What is this Outdoor Coach? Is it something do you have a website? Is there something that's a resource? What is it?
I'm throwing out videos right now. I've coached all my life. I made a living. I coached 34 years in the state of Alabama as a high school football and baseball coach. And, everybody knows me, even my grandkids. And this is stupid, but, when I had grandkids, I was like 39, 37, 38, 39, something like that. And I was like, dude, I'm not old enough to be no grandpa. I said, y'all call me coach. So my grandkids call me coach. Everybody here calls me coach, and they know me as a coach. So, we get out in the outdoors. So why not just be the outdoor coach? And that's where it all came from. And I've got a couple of episodes. I mean, it started out with us here at home. My kids, they're homebodies, but we got coon dogs. We go coon hunting. They've got chickens. I mean, we deer hunt. We trap. We creek fish. We river fish. We lake fish. We hike. There's several trails here. I mean, just outdoor fun, entertainment, and it don't take a lot for that.
That's awesome.
We camp, and that's the one thing that I'm proud of is I've got like 5 external hard drives full of video over the years with our outdoor adventures, and I'm just sharing them with you. And I got some really cool stuff. I'm gonna have some special guests. See, a lot of people don't realize that I was in the bass boat world for about 20 years. Made it to the Red Man All-American, which is like the what do they call it now? The Everstart or whatever that FLW.
Okay.
It was Operation Bass. I made it to the All-American twice, and I've met people that I've played ball with, and one of the biggest dudes in the hunting industry lives right here. And look, I coach your kids, and we used to do a radio show together, and I'm gonna have him on. And I've got some exciting stuff coming out. I'm very proud of that. I just feel persuaded to go in that direction and just share, what we do. Because, I know there are a lot of parents and kids are missing out on being out in the outdoors, man.
Absolutely.
Quit putting that phone and that. Well, the phone is great. I did an episode on that, how a phone can actually save your life.
Mm-hmm.
But get that video game. I mean, let's get out and do the real thing, man.
Yeah, no, it's definitely important to get into the outdoors and learn a couple things, and it's a little bit refreshing for the mind. It's not all digital lights and stimulation. It's there's actual light refraction that
Well, the big thing is, Ken, is you're teaching
hiking
it's like yourself in 2016. I mean, your passion drove you to something, and there was a reward there.
Yeah.
In some of your tournament fishing, and in anything that you do in the outdoors, there's rewards there, and guys love to be rewarded in certain things. And one of my favorite videos that I've got coming out pretty quick is one of my twins is he actually set and caught a coon in a trap. And he goes through the whole process. And how did he learn that? He learned it through a YouTube channel. and
that's wild.
Yeah. A raccoon is a fairly, but it all got started. We're trying to deer hunt, and I'm putting out. We can put out corn here in Alabama, and them stupid raccoons. My cameras are going off every night. I've got 4 different coons that are just feasting on my corn,
eating all your corn.
I was like, dude, I got to get rid of these stupid things, man.
Yep.
So Fisher told me, he's like, dude, I can catch them.
Yep.
So I'm like, okay. So we did a whole episode on it, man, and it's pretty cool. I got some really cool camera shots. That to me is the key. I know you guys are really versatile with a camera, but for me, doing some of this cool stuff with the camera is just that's just the biggest deal for me.
Reminds me of something, and this is completely like off the wall, and I don't know where I learned it or even if it's still like true or not, but like, so I learned that like at the raccoon trap, they're very smart and mischievous animals, but they're also very like determined animals. So like what they used to do, like an old style trap, was like you would carve a hole, just big enough for them to slide their paw into. And then you'd put like a piece of tinfoil or like a nickel or something shiny.
They love
shiny stuff because they're just trying to collect or whatever. And then you would put nails in 4 different angles, so the nails were in there, so they could slip their hand through. But when they grabbed the shiny thing, the nails would hit their wrists. So, but they were so not willing to give up on getting that shiny thing that they would just sit there with their arm in the trap until you checked, and then you
until the next day.
Until the next day, and you came through and you harvest them however you harvest them or whatever. I don't know if that actually works or not. But.
Well, that's basically what we have.
I think we froze up, Tim.
Got you.
All right, we're back.
Okay. No, I go out of my way. To talk about how much we respect the animals, and when we take an animal, we harvest and we utilize them.
Absolutely.
I mean, like I told you before we got started tonight, I'm making deer chili with awesome. Some of the meat that they harvested this year. But we have something to do with that raccoon. I'm not going to throw it away or do any of that stupid crap. Yeah. But I also want to know that somebody's pet may be coming through there, and I don't want to catch a dog or a cat or anything else. But they make a dog-proof trap. And it's That's just awesome. Like same principle of what you're talking about is it slips its hand down in that hole, its paw.
Okay.
Well, the trigger don't go off when it goes down. But when he tries to pull it out, he's got.
Gotcha.
So the next day you get there, and he's got his hand stuck in there. That's exactly how that works.
It's an improvement of that whole system.
He loaded that thing up with fish steaks, like sardine fish steaks.
Okay.
And dry dog food on top of that, and the sardine juice. Look, he set that trap at like 3:30. My cameras go off at like 6 o'clock every night. There's 4 of them in there. They're about 25, 30 pounds. I mean, they're huge coons. That sucker got it within the first 15 minutes. Saw it on camera.
Wow.
So Fisher, that was a jam upset, man.
That's
and you know, you can learn something from that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Tim. Is there anything else in the River Bassin world that you would like to cover? Is there a story? Is there a technique? Is there anything else like with the outdoor coach or anything that you'd like to share? Any last parting words?
I would like to encourage other people to go to the Tim Perkins fishing page and hit the follow button and just follow us.
Absolutely.
You know, it's not going to be for everybody, and I'm not tooting my horn, but there is a generation of kids just like my own. I saw that at 15 years old. They don't watch TV anymore. I mean, they do a lot of YouTube stuff. And look, there's a lot of good information, a lot of bad information, but just want to entertain, man. And we try to, and my motto is we keep it as real as it gets. You know, bathing in the river on our overnight trips. I mean, simple stuff that nobody ever knows about. But I would like to see, we talked about it. I'm getting to that point right now that there's going to be a fine line. I love competing. I hope I go to my grave competing. But, you know, in realistic terms, competing against a hyperhead like some of you guys, I would still love to see the River Bassin Trail come back. I really would, because there is such a need, or some of the bigger tournaments open up the walls for that. Yeah. And, you know, we can coexist. You know, I don't know why and I'm not going to name anybody. Okay. I drawed a check in one particular series in every tournament that I fished this year. And I think I fished 4 or 5 of them. It's a national trail. And I was in the top 5, had an opportunity to win one of them. And the guy calls me and is like, dude, you were way up this creek. And I promise you, they'll cut that out next year. Promise you. And that tournament there is a tournament on that series on the same place. And I bet you money. Because one of the other trails was on that same lake, and and that's deterring people, man. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of people in our world that got into kayak fishing to get away from a crowd, man. I mean, you know what I mean?
I agree.
But anyway, Ken, it was so good to talk to you again, man.
Absolutely,
good seeing you.
Is there anybody else you want to throw out there? You want to mention any other sponsors?
Oh, my awesome wife. Let me please do that.
Absolutely.
Look, I appreciate her for putting up with my behind for a long time. I was not always a nice dude. Sometimes it's still questionable, but by the grace of God, I started kayak fishing and I have her blessings. I mean, it's all good. I've introduced her to it, and I've introduced my two boys who are awesome anglers. And look, use the outdoor coach as a resource. If there's young kids, please hit me up, man. PM me, do whatever. I'll set you up an overnight trip. I mean, my goodness, we're pushing 500 rivers now. So if it's wet, I've probably been on it.
All right. Well, you guys heard it. Get a hold of him. If you guys want to set anything up like that, search him out on Facebook. We'll try to put a link in somewhere, whether it's on a post or something like that. We'll figure that out later. But
it's Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, everything is Tim Perkins Fishing.
Tim Perkins Fishing. There you go. Well, Tim, thanks for being one of my rivals. I don't think I could be anywhere near where I am today if you weren't around. So, competing against you and causing that drive. So I appreciate that and everything else that you've done for the community. So thanks for coming on, and I hope you have a good night and a good 2022.
Amen.
All right, guys. Have a good one.
You too, bud.